What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Cam, and I'm sitting here with my lovely wife, also
the host, Vicky. Welcome back to another episode of Everything is We. Because
everything is we, baby.
Everything is we. Today we are here with another episode. This is the second round two, take two of the podcast. All right. And this time we're going to be talking about something that everybody wants us to talk about. Well, I wanted to talk about it too, because I feel like it's not something that's commonly talked about. One, in the Christian culture. And also, I just feel like there's so much secrecy around sex. So I feel like we should just dive right in.
Delve.
And I'm just going to give a preface. I'm just going to let y'all know right now, I'm a little bit childish and I like to make that's what she said jokes. So I feel like there's going to be a lot of those in this episode. I apologize in advance, but my Michael Scott is going to come out at some point. So sorry. So today we're talking about sex. This is something that I feel like a lot of people don't have enough clarity on because it's not talked about enough. I mentioned in a Instagram story the other day, somebody asked me about how was I able to keep my purity until marriage. And anytime people ask me this question, I used to give very vague answers to avoid just going into the whole spiel, because I feel like I'm either a cut and dry person, like I give you a one-word answer, or I'm going to go all the way in and tell you my whole life story so I can explain. And I never really have the time to explain. So this is what this podcast is for me to go all the way in. So to answer that question, I feel like people equate purity and virginity and make that the same thing, and it's not the same thing. Those are two different words, and I think we need to clarify that because
it has connections.
Well, yeah, they are in the same category of word.
It has connection, yeah, but
it's
I
not
agree
the
with
same.
what you're saying.
It's not the
Purity
same thing.
and virginity are not the same.
Yes, and so I think that's important to understand.
But they're both held in high regard.
They are
in Christian culture.
Yes, not to say that virginity doesn't matter. I don't want you to think that by what I'm about to explain, but virginity does matter. But I think purity matters more, and I think purity is not talked about enough in its entirety because people only consider your purity to be just the actual sex. You know what I mean? But there's so many different aspects to purity that people don't talk about, or at least they're shy to talk about it, or I don't know. But I just feel like it's not talked about enough to where you really understand what the whole point of keeping your virginity is, you know? Because we just say, oh, don't have sex till marriage. But what about all of the other stuff that go into like your sexuality as a person? You know what I mean? It's not just having the sex. There's like all of the things that lead up to sex that nobody talks about too.
Right. So keeping your conversations pure.
Your thoughts. Let's start there.
Yeah. Your thoughts.
How do you deal with thoughts? Pure. Yeah.
Like the Bible says, how can a young man keep his way pure? Or how can a young person keep their way pure? By taking heed to the word of God. Like I said this on one of my Instagram lives. If you have been reading your Bible every day, or fasting and praying and staying before the Lord, it's very, very difficult to think perverted thoughts.
Yeah, that's true.
If the people you hang around and the music you listen to and the people you follow on Instagram are all showcasing a sense of perversion, let's just be clear. I know people don't want to talk about that because you know folks want to stand in their power and their sexuality, and okay, that's cool if you're not a believer,
right?
But if you're a believer, we have to die to ourself,
right?
And sometimes that means denying our sensuality, our sexual desires, our wants, our urges.
For a season. It doesn't mean forever. It just means for a season.
Because just like there are rules and laws, like the law of gravity, what goes up must come down.
Right.
There are laws in the kingdom, principles in the kingdom that we have to follow. And if you stay within the confines of those principles, it can be beautiful.
Yeah.
And it is beautiful. You know, not to make a long story
Very.
short, but we'll go more into detail. But now being, you know, coming up on 7 years of marriage next week, like sex now is way more beautiful than it was.
It hits
when
different.
It literally hits different. But it's like
it.
You just really have to understand that God designed sex for marriage. I'll use me. I like to use a lot of examples. I use me for instance. Okay. And my wife will probably laugh. She'll laugh at this.
I'm going to laugh this whole episode.
She'll laugh at this. Okay. I love basketball. I love golf. And during the seasons where I can't play golf and basketball, I have a basketball hoop in the kitchen. Some of you that watch our vlogs may see it. And I bring some of my golf clubs in the house during the winter season so I can, you know, practice, work on my swing. Now,
my house is a gym.
The house was not designed for me to run around the house playing basketball and swinging the golf club. And when I bring something out of a sphere or place where it is designed, like when I bring the basketball in the house and I'm playing in the house, number one, it's not the same.
No.
And number two, my wife appreciates those sports more when I play them in the areas where they were designed. And sometimes we can bring our own definitions. We can bring our own ideas in the house and play house. If you, y'all gonna be mad at me again. If you are not married and you are sleeping with your boyfriend and girlfriend, or you're sleeping around in general, and you're a Christian, you profess Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you are playing house. You are making room for the enemy to step in. You are putting yourself in a compromising position. Oh my God. Because like let's just be real. Let's just be very, very clear. Okay. When I'm living in my parents' house, I have less of a desire to do what is wrong. I particularly did because I very, very much was scared of getting caught.
You're good.
Now, when I moved away and went to college, and there's no human being leading me, guiding me, directing me, watching me, looking at text messages, monitoring me, and I'm left to do what I believe is right in my own eyes, I did what I wanted to do. And in doing what I wanted to do, there was a season of my life where I was like, bruh, sex is like, you do it and you're like, dang, like that's what it was. Because I expressed something with someone who I had no intentions on spending the rest of my life with. And I did it outside of marriage. Also, there's several ways we can break off into this. What people try to do is, and I've said this before to various people. Oh, I can't wait to be married to you. I can't wait to see what it feels like to be married to you. And trying to talk like low-key spiritual to get away with doing sexual activities.
Using it as like a crutch or something.
Yeah. Like a way to spit game as a Christian guy. Man, I wonder what it'd be like to spend the night with you.
And then do it anyway.
And like talking like that. And they're like, yeah, I wonder what it would be like to be with you too. And
I mean, if you're going to talk about it, you might as well do it. You might as well.
And you're not
put
married.
your money where your mouth is. You know what I'm saying?
And then also because people are slick today. People will say that they're a virgin, but you've done everything except penetration.
But that was me though. You're in my business.
I I was in the same boat. I
we
told people
both was.
it's like, oh yeah, I'm a virgin, but like you didn't gave head, you didn't got head. We just gonna go to, can we just be real? You didn't gave head, you didn't got head.
Watching porn every day.
You didn't watched all kinds of porn
all day.
You didn't let people fondle body parts.
At that point, it's like, why? What are you holding on to still? Like, that's the point that I had got to. And that was me by the time I got to college, which is why I started trying to wild out, because like I had gotten to a point where it's like, well, I'm holding on to something that really isn't even there anymore, because the purity of me being a virgin, even though I am technically a virgin, the purity is gone. So without the purity, the virginity means nothing. It doesn't mean anything. Now it's just a physical fact instead of like an emotional and mental, because the thing about sex is you have to be vulnerable, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. Well, if you've already exposed yourself emotionally and mentally, then the physical part, that might as well go too. You're already halfway there. Once you get to a certain point, you can't stop. Your mind doesn't let you, because it's like when you get, it's like how they explain people who have addictions to drugs and stuff. Like the first time it was just weed, but then it's like, well, I want something stronger than that, so you go for something stronger.
Because
like
you're always trying to chase that high.
Right. So it's like, okay, you may not have had sex the first time you were exposed to something, but that first exposure grows and builds into something else. So it's like, you may not have thought about losing your virginity, but your mind is already headed in that direction as soon as you start allowing yourself to be exposed to things that you weren't supposed to be exposed to. And sometimes it's not even your fault, but still you have to have the ability to stop yourself when you know you're going too far. You know what I mean? I didn't stop myself, so I kept going.
Or you have to be in a place spiritually where you know you've gone too far. Some people, you don't know that you've gone too far.
Some people don't know, but some people do know.
Some people do know.
Especially if you're always asking, is this a sin? Is this a sin? Is this a sin? Then you know.
You're convicted.
You're convicted.
Yeah, you're convicted.
So the fact that you're even asking means that you should probably stop. If you have to ask if something is a sin, then don't do it. That's what that means. Just don't. Just stop yourself, because you're already worried. And that guilt is gonna, like, the guilt started before you actually did it because you asked the question. So then the guilt is gonna be worse if you do it. So it's like, you might as well slow yourself down.
I also think another thing that trips up adolescents, or even, those of you that may be in your 20s and you're still single and you trying to, figure out, you try to experiment because you want to be good at sex for your potential spouse.
And that's, I feel like, an issue that comes from somebody not telling you the importance of waiting. Like, you want to find answers because nobody's explained anything to you. And I'm not sure exactly at what point you're supposed to be explained those things so that you don't. Because I can't sit up here and say it's my parents' fault that I was at 13 years old Googling images. Like, I mean, that's not their fault. They were trying to protect me. So the fact that they didn't explain everything was them protecting me, right? A lot of people question, it's like, okay, if the church has been doing it wrong, if our parents have been doing it wrong and not explaining enough to us and giving us the opportunity to make smarter decisions by explaining more, like, how much are they supposed to explain? Because at some point, it's like, you can only say so much before you become a stumbling block. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, we don't have children yet, but I definitely think about that. Like,
right.
even being a youth pastor, it's like, okay, sometimes we had 12-year-olds in youth ministry.
Right.
And I remember growing up, being a PK, and, I couldn't wait to be 12, and then I couldn't wait to be 13, but they let me in youth ministry earlier. Really, it was 13 and up, but I got in at 12 because I was mature. And so me being mature at 12 is even totally different than the generation now being 12, and they were born with devices. So like
Right.
9 times out of 10, they have seen some kind of pornographic image,
Yeah.
or they've heard a sexually explicit song. So it's like, at what point do we start explaining to even, tweens, as they say, and preteens, when do we start talking to them about sex?
And what's the appropriate way to go about, like, how do you explain it in a way that doesn't make it enticing? You know what I mean?
Right.
But also don't make it sound like you're going to hell.
Right. Because I think that's what it's like. Certain parents feel like, I don't want to talk to you about the birds and the bees, as they say.
What birds and what bees?
I don't want to talk to you about that because I don't want to open up your mind to curiosity.
But we curious anyway.
I don't think that the scare tactics work either, because
No.
in my case, I'm a college student. An individual comes to my room and she starts taking her clothes off. I'm not scared of the video that I saw in youth ministry anymore.
You're not, because you looking at what's in front of you.
My body is doing something.
Right.
I mean, all of that stuff I didn't seen. And what do I do in that moment? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, afterwards, was I scared? Absolutely.
Because you'd feel guilty.
You're right. How
do
do
you
we have
prevent?
the balance of explaining or opening up or having open dialogue? Because, and I will say this, when I would come home from college and, my dad asked me blatantly, he was like, don't lie. And I was like, no, sir, I'm no longer a virgin. And then he began to open up and talk to me about things. And I was like, man, like,
why didn't you tell me this before?
But it was like, thank you.
Yeah.
It was like, man, now I have this knowledge,
Right.
that I wasn't necessarily equipped with before. Or he could have told me, and then I still may have gone out and done whatever. But the fact that I was equipped at a greater level helps. You know what I'm saying? That's why I tell parents today, like, be open with your children. Like, be honest with your children about your experiences.
Yeah.
And don't make it super scary and like you're going to make them be on punishment or whoop them because they're having feelings and they're going through things in their body that, they don't know. Like, so just open up.
My parents were really open with me too after I'd already done stupid stuff. They didn't know how much I knew until I knew too much. I mean, we could just be real. I was exposed to porn at a very young age. I had been curious from like age 9 or 10. And by the time they got to me to talk to me about stuff, I had already seen so much that they were like, how do you know about this? Like, how do you know? And I'm like, internet. So like they in turn were open and honest with me, and it gave me so much clarity on even I feel like things that they went through when they were younger followed me, like almost like generational curse kind of thing, but not really. But that's kind of what it was.
No,
but
I mean
like,
it's literally like the things that your parents have gone through,
right?
That they either have dealt with or haven't dealt with all the way. We will fight similar battles.
Exactly. And I think they didn't realize that until I was already halfway through the dough. The openness that my parents did give me when they gave it to me helped me to put 2 and 2 together and understand, okay, this is why I need to do better, because what they went through, I don't want that to happen to my kids in the future. So that was always in the back of my head. But at the same time, I still made the decisions. Once I met you, it was over. I was like,
There's so many layers to the onion when it comes to purity, sexual immorality, virginity, because some people may feel, well, I had a terrible experience and this is what happened to me and I was sexually assaulted, so like I'm not a virgin. But purity is still for you.
To me, that's why I said purity is more important to focus on, because your purity can be restored through prayer, and purity can be restored. And I've experienced that more than one time. You get to a certain point and you're like, I don't want to be like this anymore, or I don't want to have these thoughts anymore because it's affecting me in a negative way. So then you decide to change your mind literally like change your mind, the way you think. It's everything starts in your thoughts. You decide to change your thoughts. Obviously your virginity can never be restored, but at the same time, that's why I feel like that shouldn't be the focus.
And then also be very clear. You can't restore your purity on your own.
No, not on your own.
God does the restoring.
Exactly.
But what I think we often fail to do is get some solid people around you, or
accountability.
Yeah, you're a youth pastor or a youth minister or friends, family, whoever it is that's going to help you and hold you accountable. Get those kind of people around you so you can have real, open, honest, and transparent conversations with them to say, hey, I'm feeling the heat.
Right. I need help.
Listen, this boy is fine. And
yeah. And that can't be,
you know what I'm saying?
It can't be your significant other. And I think that's one of the reasons why we kept slipping.
We failed
up.
Because we would talk to each other.
Yeah, because we thought that we could hold each other accountable for something we both struggling with. Like that ain't like, I don't even think, I think at some point we was like trying not to do stuff. And
yeah, we would like,
but then send each other stuff on Tumblr.
Oh my God, Tumblr.
We both had to get off Tumblr.
Tumblr was the devil.
That's the problem that we had. I feel like because you were the only.
You cannot be your boyfriend or girlfriend or fiance's accountability partner when it comes to sex.
That didn't work. We tried that. That we're just letting you know that does not work. Okay, you need somebody else outside of the person that you're attracted to.
You are going to fail.
You are going to fail.
You are setting yourself.
We didn't.
Well, how are you feeling?
We tried that. Didn't work.
I'm just so horny.
Me too.
I can't wait to see you.
Yeah.
Like, bruh, no. Get some people around you, some solid people that's going to help you and hold you accountable and pray for you and pull up on you.
And do practical things like put blocks on your computer and they only got the password and can't, you know what I mean? Like if you need somebody to do something like that, then that's what you need to do.
Weekly check-ins, daily check-ins. How we doing today? How we doing today?
Right. And that's something that when people ask me about boundaries are not an one size fits all thing. And that's what I don't like that people preach is like, these are the boundaries you need to have and you need to do this and do this because this is what works. And it's like, not everybody needs the same amount of boundaries, right? Some people need more boundaries than others. So don't think that, what we did is how, because obviously we didn't do right, but what we did, it was going to work for you because it might not. Just because we married and happy doesn't mean that us slipping up wasn't an issue, because it was. You know what I mean? Because I think some people see success and then they say whatever they did to get their success, that's what I'm going to do.
That's what I always say. You see the glory.
Yes.
You see the glory, reality, but you don't know their story. You don't know what they've gone through. You don't know what they've walked through.
In reality,
their struggles, their proclivities, their downfallings. You don't know.
Right.
You just don't know.
Right. And in reality, me and Cam have a great sex life now, but I was struggling the whole first year or two of our marriage. And it was all because I hadn't really given myself back to God and actually like got my mind right. So just because we got married and it worked out doesn't mean I was okay. It wasn't just like, oh, well, we're married, so that's not a problem anymore. Impure thoughts will follow you wherever you go. It don't matter what your relationship status is. Like, if you're not pure before marriage, you can be not pure in marriage too. Like that doesn't just go away. And I feel like that's another issue is like people idolize marriage because it's like the end of the struggle. It's like, this is the end of
that's not the case.
It's the end of my,
lust will still be after you if you're married.
Yes. And
you will still be attracted to other women when you're married. You will still have sexual desires when you're married.
Outside of your marriage.
If you're addicted to porn before you're married,
you'll be
and
addicted
then you get
to porn
married,
in marriage.
Marriage is not a cure for all of your sexual immoralities.
No, it's not. It actually amplifies it and makes it worse. And then you be acting like, well, I don't know why I want to do X, Y, and Z when I have my husband laying right here next to me. Why do I want something outside of him? And it's like, because your mind ain't pure. You're going to always want something you can't have. I have a husband. I can have sex with him as much as I want to, but I don't want to have sex with him. Now I want to go watch some porn and do it myself. Like that don't make sense.
Right.
But it's because I left my mind open to whatever.
It's called perversion.
Yeah. So it's going to take something that's supposed to be one way and twist it.
Literally, if you have ever seen a wicker tree, your grandmama probably had one of these chairs. And wicker chairs, they take the wicker tree branches and twist them together to make those cheers. That's what wickedness is. It takes what is true and twists and perverts it. That's wickedness.
Is this recording? Sorry if the audio and the visual
technical
weren't
difficulties
synced for a second. We had a technical difficulty, but we're back. It's okay.
We're back.
Learning. We're learning. Still working with our set and everything. So
yeah, we
good. Okay.
Sorry, we wanted to start off this next segment talking about communication with your spouse in relations to sex.
A lot of my followers were asking me to talk about like the positive part of it, but also how to navigate going into your sex life with your partner that you're now married to, and how to do that in a way that isn't weird, because you've been taught for so long not to do it. So now when you can do it, how do you make it not weird?
It ties into love languages,
right?
Because I remember this vividly, because I was like, dude, you were such a jerk in that moment.
What did I do?
I'm talking about myself.
Oh.
We were outside of our friend's apartment, and it was chilly, and we were waiting for them. We was about to go on a double date. We was waiting for them to come out, and like, you wanted to hug me, and like, you just wanted to be like, hug me and hold me while we were waiting for them standing outside. And at that particular point, like, I'm not a touchy person, and I was like no, like, and like I look back on them like, dude, you was such a jerk. Like, that was so rude.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, like I was like, dude, like,
oh, it's okay.
I feel terrible looking back on it now, because now I'm way more of a touchy-feely person than I ever was 6 years ago.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So over time has helped. So that's one. And intimacy. Intimacy is not sexual.
Yes, that's another thing that has helped out a lot. I think learning how to be verbally intimate as opposed to just like touching, and because I'm a touchy person, so that's how I communicate. But I've had to learn how to be more intentional about my words and how I express myself verbally, as well as emotional intimacy, spiritual intimacy. Like, those all tie together, and that's what I feel like is the beauty of marriage, because when you're with somebody for life, you get the opportunity to explore all of those intimacies together to create the Big Bang. It's not like if we were just dating and hanging out because we like each other, and then we have sex and it's like, oh, yay. It's like a little bitty, okay. But then, like, now that we have like deep intellectual conversations, like, we may be talking about something just like real basic, like the bills we gotta pay, and just, that intimacy of like working through issues. And I mean, all of that works together, because then for some reason that just be turning me on. I'd be like, wow, he's talking about something so
like
business savvy, and
like,
you know what I mean? Like,
handling your business and expressing how you really feel, because we're such like containers. Mm-hmm. My dad said something that was so powerful to me years and years ago. And he said, son, women are carriers because you guys have a womb. That's what makes you a womb man. A womb man. You're a man with a womb. I know that sounds crazy, but that's just the fact. But men, we're not carriers, but we can be containers. We hold stuff, we put it in the container, and we like set it off on the side, and we try to forget about it. And like every now and then it'll come up, it'll peek its head out that container, and you like, dog, man, like, you really like, so you're struggling. So you got a whole warehouse in your mind of containers and stuff that you have compartmentalized that you have not expressed to anyone, let alone your wife. And obviously there's some things that, we're carrying the weight of that we can't necessarily express immediately to our wives, but at some point you have to express that. You have to open up. You have to let your wife in, because your wife can't be a helpmeet if she don't know what she need to help you with.
Right. But that emotional release, you see where I'm going with this? That emotional release,
my God,
leads to a greater sexual release. Can I get an amen?
Come on, somebody.
Because it's like now you've expressed vulnerability to me in another way that enhances the vulnerability that we already are engaging in, right? So it's like the vulnerability is on all playing fields. It's not just on the sexual level, but we've also been emotionally vulnerable, spiritually vulnerable, financially vulnerable. Go down the list. It's like all of those vulnerabilities build up the love that we have for one another. That's how you end up falling more in love with the person you're with. That's why I feel like I love you more now than I did when we first got married, because there's so much more vulnerability that we've exposed each other to in that time. So it's like now we've built up so much emotion together that when we do have sex, sorry if that was loud, but that's how I feel about it. It hits different. Because before we was just doing it because we were like really liked each other. We were just kind of going through the motions.
Yeah, it was like marriage.
Okay, I put this
marriage
here,
robotics.
Here. Yes, it was very autopilot.
Marriage robotics, like, oh, okay.
This is what we do when we like feeling each other. We just do this.
It's been every other day. We didn't do it the last 2 days, so I guess it's time today.
I guess it's time.
Tonight. You know what I'm saying? Like,
it's not like we weren't attracted to each other. Of course we were attracted, but it's like we didn't have any. We had a foundation, and that's it. There was no layers to our relationship yet for us to like really feel each other. I don't even know how to explain that.
Yeah,
There's no depth.
I mean,
you can't go deep if there's no depth.
You can't dive in the kiddie pool. You gonna bust.
Pastor Mike said it.
You gonna bust
your head. Pastor Mike said it. You
open.
can't dive in the kiddie pool.
But yeah, I mean, intimacy has layers,
right?
And it takes time.
It takes time. That's the thing. Time is the key.
It takes time, and it takes effort. You have to have a desire to want to know more about your spouse, to want to, if every time I see you, I just want to have sex and we don't have conversation, how am I really getting to know you?
Right.
How am I getting to know you deeper? Because the Victoria that I know now is different than the Victoria that I knew
way different
in 2014.
And I think like it's visibly evident to each other. I feel the same way about you. You don't even look the same as when I first met you. When we first started dating, you look nothing like that anymore. I look nothing like I used to look.
I don't. I look back and I'm like, ugh.
And that's why every
Cam,
marriage.
Why was you looking like that, Cam?
I mean, you were cute, but you're better now. Every year, I love you more and you get more attractive every year. And I don't think it's just like a physical thing. I think it literally just has to do with how we go through things. We come out victorious. And then you just look better every year. But that builds up like now I'm able to really be vulnerable with Cam and talk to him about sex and not feel weird, or I can be more vocal, if you know what I mean. I just feel like I can be more physically and emotionally vulnerable because of the fact that we've gone through so much. For people who ask about like, how do you get over the stigmas, I guess, once you get married? Like, how do you get over the stigmas of sex being shameful and you shouldn't talk about this, you shouldn't do that, blah, blah, blah. It takes time to unwire those thoughts. It's the same thing with like getting your purity back. It's like you have to work through those emotions and feelings and let them kind of die, It takes time for those things to go away. But I think a lot of that has to do with just experience, honestly. It happens with experience. It happens with time. When you go through things and y'all become closer, it doesn't happen overnight. You can't there's no manual. Like, there's no, like, play by play.
It's a process.
And I think people want me to
expedite the process.
Because people are used to the way I explain things in my beauty videos. It's like, here's a step-by-step process on how to get this result, right? There's no way to do that in a relationship. Nobody can tell you this is the 5 things you need to know before you have sex on your wedding night. This is what you need to do. I can't do that.
People do that, and it's like,
you can't do that.
This is not a
one thing I will never do
situation.
is give y'all a play-by-play of what you should do to have sex with your spouse, because I'm not finna do that. That's because everybody's different. Everybody has different experiences, and you may like something that I don't. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I'm not finna tell you what to do. Like, I'm not gonna tell you how to prepare for that. I mean, obviously there are practical things you can do to prepare your body, like your physical body, like stretch. I mean, but you should do that anyway. It's like taking care of your body and being healthy. Those are things you should do anyway. You know what I mean? Like that stuff you should already be doing. You shouldn't prepare just because you about to have sex. Like, you should actually be taking care of yourself regardless. So I'm not fit to tell you a routine that you know what I mean? What I'm trying to say is there's no play by play, and there's nothing that I can say that will define your sex life for you. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to tell you, this is what I do. This is what I think is okay. This is because one thing I can't stand also is the shame that people try to put on the marriage bed where there is none. There are no boundaries that you should have with your spouse. Okay. So I'm not going to tell you should be having it this many days and this is what you should do and what you shouldn't do. This is how you get your man to do this and blah. Like, I'm not going to do that either. I also don't believe in being in other people's beds. That's weird. It's mega weird. If there's anybody who's ever told you that you shouldn't do something in the bed with your spouse, they're weird. Don't listen to them. That's weird. Sometimes people feel like they need somebody to tell them what to do it right.
No, communicate with your spouse.
That's something you talk to your spouse about.
Communicate with your spouse. And that also takes time, because that takes time to express, like,
I don't like this, I like that, whatever.
Yeah,
that's between
I feel
y'all.
this way. Well, I feel this way. Well, I didn't know that because, I'm holding this stuff in.
Yeah.
Containers, compartments. And it's like, I've been feeling like this for XYZ, and then you just blurt something out in the heat of the moment. And he's like,
and
well,
then now it's
like,
an
well,
offense.
dang.
Now you offended.
Well, I didn't know you've been feeling like this for 6 years.
Okay, so here's how we can
whatever.
alleviate that. Here's how we can alleviate that. One thing that I found that works is setting aside time, like on your date nights that you guys are supposed to be going on with your spouse, because y'all supposed to still be dating. Set aside time, like on date night or something, where you guys just talk openly. You know, if you need help, there are prompt cards that we talked about on my live. There are cards. I will share them with you guys. If you are on YouTube, the link will be in the description box. If not, it'll be somewhere on my Instagram page or whatever. I'll be sure to link them for y'all. But there are these cards that I found on Amazon. Yes, thank you. I had a mind fart. Amazon gave you little questions, and you can ask your spouse these questions. Or if you want to write down your own questions, do that too. But if you feel like you can't get out what you need to get out, or you want to ask a question about something and you don't know how, write it down. Find, some kind of way to give it to your spouse in a way that'll be helpful to you. However you communicate best. Because sometimes people aren't good at verbally saying things. Like, I've had to learn. There's a lot of times in my marriage I wrote Cam letters. Like the actual letter, like a note. Like, I typed it out, printed it out, put it on his desk. Because I'm like, I don't know how to verbally say this. So I'm going to do what I know how to do best, which is write things down. So I wrote it down. I gave it to him and he read it. He was like, oh, I didn't know you felt like that. Well, there you go. So if that helps, if you can't talk about it openly yet, you write it down. That may be cute to him. He may like that. It may turn him on or something.
Because you have to. However you express yourself, you have to express it.
You have to get it out.
So in that instance, like, I grew up in a house where we use our words. She grew up in a house where they're touchy-feely.
Right.
I grew up in a house where I wasn't touchy-feely. So I'm going to use my words. So then when she wasn't using her words, I was frustrated because I'm like, use your words. Because this is how I was raised. And she was like, well, you should touch me. And I'm like, well, I wasn't raised like that. And so, I used my words to express how I felt. She wrote because that's how she expressed her feelings. And then I read the letter. I was like, wow, man, you expressed yourself. And I'm reading it and I know you. So I'm reading it in your voice and you're putting me in your shoes to understand how you're feeling.
Yeah.
And that is intimacy.
That's intimacy. And over time it changed. I was able to express myself more.
That's communication. That's the
effective
communication. That's going to help you in the long run, bro.
Yeah. Yeah. However,
brother,
you have
sister,
to get it out.
It's going to help. We want y'all to succeed and excel in your marriages and your future marriages and your future relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Because man, we need people. God uses people to bless us.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I always say this, just because my life went a certain way doesn't mean that yours is going to be the same way. So everybody has their own process. But we're here for you, okay? We're here for you. We're not here to make anyone feel like they doing life wrong and all of that stuff. Listen, we just here to give you the real, all right? This is what we believe. If you want to believe something different, that's fine. But we just talking from our perspective, okay? And if you have more questions, you can definitely ask questions. We're both open books here. We ain't gonna be like, you should have did this and you was wrong for doing that and you ain't doing it right. Like, it ain't never gonna be us. So like I said, if you have more questions, we'd be happy to do a question and answer after this video. If you have more questions, I think we figured out a way to have people chat with us in the podcast. Not chat, but like leave messages and we answer them. So we can do that as well, because I know this is one of those topics where it can keep going. You know what I mean? Yep. So of course this is not the last time we'll talk about sex, because I think it's very important, especially in marriage. So we just want to make sure that you guys are helped in any way possible. So be sure to follow our Instagram page at Everything Is We. Follow us individually, even though we're together, but follow us individually as well, at Victorious Logan, at Cameron J. Logan. Be sure to follow Life with the Logans to see more behind the scenes of our life and how we are just on a regular day-to-day basis. And that's it. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. We'll talk to y'all in our next one. All right.
Love y'all.
Love
Peace.
Y'all.